Is the road to hell really paved with good intentions? And why would we associate something like good intentions with a place so evil as hell? I'm Carrie Blazer, and we're going to do a deep dive into those questions today. We're going to lean on Alan Watts, Dr. Joe Dispenza, Carl Jung, Dr. Andrew Huberman, Dr. Gabor Mate, because I love me a multidisciplinary approach to understand reality. Please check out my free ebook below if you want to go deeper. Also, like and subscribe so you can stay up to date on the latest and greatest on my channel, where we explore psychology, healing from childhood trauma, and the divine feminine. But let's get into today's topic with Alan Watts asking this exact question: is the road to hell paved with good intentions? And let's see what he has to say about that. Let's get going.
You see, the reason you want to be better is the reason why you aren't. We aren't better because we want to be. Because the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Because all the do-gooders in the world, whether they're doing good for others or doing it for themselves, are troublemakers. On the basis of kindly let me help you or you'll drown, said the monkey, putting the fish safely up a tree.
And I'll ask the question for you to think about: do religions do this? Do religions knock on your door and say, I'll help you convert, or I'll call you a heretic and then I'll have to kill you?
We white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, British, German, American, have been on a rampage for the past 100 or more years to improve the world.
And who gave them license to do that? Did Christianity teach people God gave us dominion over animals and land? That the cross is the only ladder to heaven? And that if we teach everyone that, then everyone can go to heaven after they die? Well, that perspective doesn't accept the fact that we live in a holographic universe, that everything is a projection. Hence, I'm leaning on Carl Jung, Dr. Joe Dispenza, Dr. Andrew Huberman, Dr. Gabor Mate.
We have given the benefits of our culture, our religion, our technology to everybody, except perhaps the Australian Aborigines. And we have insisted that they receive the benefits of our culture, even our political styles, our democracy. You better be democratic, or we'll shoot you. And having conferred these blessings all over the place, we wonder why everybody hates us.
Right. Why does everybody hate us when Christianity supposedly teaches love thy enemy? But were the Crusades, the Inquisition, the burning women at the stake, Manifest Destiny, where we killed 90% of Native Americans, 60 million buffalo, hundreds of millions of beavers, wolves, otters, and created climate collapse? Is that loving thy enemy? Or is that hating thyself? Or is that a projection of one's own self-hate and then holding other people accountable to it?
See, because sometimes doing good to others and even doing good to oneself is amazingly destructive. Because it's full of conceit. How do you know what's good for other people? How do you know what's good for you? If you say you want to improve, then you ought to know what's good for you. But obviously you don't, because if you did, you would be improved. So we don't know. It's like the problem of geneticists, which they face today. I went to a meeting of geneticists not so long ago where they gathered in a group of philosophers and theologians and said, now look here, we need help. We now are on the verge of figuring out how to breed any kind of human character we would want to have. We can give you saints, philosophers, scientists, great politicians, anything you want, just tell us. What kind of human beings ought we to breed? So I said, how will those of us who are genetically unregenerate make up our minds what genetically generate people might be? Because I'm afraid very much that our selection of virtues may not work. It may be like, for example, this new kind of high-yield grain which is made and which is becoming ecologically destructive. When we interfere with the processes of nature and breed efficient plants and efficient animals, there's always some way in which we have to pay for it.
But what is progress? Is progress having an idea and seeing if it works? Or is progress opening our hearts, our souls, which are born of the quantum field, and our souls house all the wisdom and knowledge in the universe, and then seeing what comes out? Because I'm arguing the latter, like trans kids. That was having an idea and seeing if it works. But trans kids, creating kids who can't reproduce, is that a long-term solution to our current mental health challenges? Because to me, that seems like a lot of self-hate, that we're going to teach kids that life is so challenging that you were born in the wrong body and now you need surgery, you need lifelong medications, and you can never give birth. You can never procreate, but we'll solve all your problems for you. You won't commit suicide. So in what ways are we paying for believing that progress comes from an idea and not from our soul? Like, let's use Stephen Hawking's, for example. When he would have his progress, a whole equation would just land in his head. And then he'd, figure it out. That's intuitive knowing, masculine. Wisdom is feminine. But let's, consider this question. When we're shutting down the fact that we all have souls that has all the wisdom and knowledge in the universe, and we shut down our hearts and we over rely on our brains to figure it out, is that intelligent? Is that using all the best parts of ourselves? Or is that unconscious? Is that lack of awareness about how reality is created? I'd argue the latter. Well, we'll see.
And I can well see that eugenically produced human beings might be dreadful. We could have a plague of virtuous people. Do you realize that? Any animal considered in itself is virtuous, it does its thing, but in crowds they're awful. Like a crowd of ants or locusts on the rampage. They're all perfectly good animals, but there's just too much. I could imagine a perfectly pestiferous mass of 1 million saints. So I said to these people, look, there's the only thing you can do. Just be sure that a vast variety of human beings is maintained. Don't please breed us down to a few excellent types. Excellent for what? We never know how circumstances are going to change and how our need for different kinds of people changes. At one time, we may need very individualistic and aggressive people. At another time, we may need very cooperative, team-working people. At another time, we may need people who are full of interest in dexterous manipulation of the external world.
I'm going to bring up Carl Jung, where he has the ideas of ego inflation and ego humility. Is it ego inflation or ego humility to create a eugenics lab thinking that humans know better than everything else? And how's that worked out for us when we did think we knew better than everybody else?
At another time, we may need people who explore into their own psychology and are introspective. There is no knowing, but the more varieties and the more skills we have, obviously, the better. So you see, here again, the problem comes out in genetics. We do not really know how to interfere with the way the world is. The way the world actually is an enormously complex, interrelated organism. The same problem arises in medicine because the body is a very complexly interrelated organism. And if you look at the body in a superficial way, you may see there's something wrong with it. Here's chickenpox. And there's spots that itch that come out all over the place. Well, you might say, well, spots are there, cut them off. So you kill the bug. Well, then you find you've got real problems. Because you had to introduce some bugs to kill the bug. It's like bringing rabbits into Australia. And that starts going all over the place and getting out of hand. But then you think, well, now, wait a minute. It wasn't the bugs in the blood. There are bugs all over the place. What was wrong with this person that his blood system suddenly became vulnerable to those particular bugs?
Excellent question. And we're going to get into that in a second with an Einstein quote. The field is the sole governing agency of the particle. The energy field of the soul controls the body, and we're healed from Dr. Joe Dispenza. So this whole cut them off, kill the bug is an external solution to an internal problem. If the field or the energy controls the particle, then how is cutting off the chicken pox or killing the bug dealing with the problem that attracted the bug into its life? Based on the laws of physics, we attract what we are through energetic resonance, meaning a vibrational match. So why was that person who has chickenpox a vibrational match for the virus? Why was I a vibrational match when my oldest daughter was born? Almost died of bacterial sepsis, spent 2 weeks on a ventilator in ICU. Why was I a vibrational match for that? When we ask those questions, we can get to the root of the problem. But when we take an external approach to an internal problem, we're asking the wrong questions because our worldview is skewed.
His resistance wasn't up. Therefore, what you should have given him was not an antibiotic, but vitamins. Okay, so we're going to build up his resistance. But resistance to what? I mean, you may build up resistance to this and this and this class of bugs, but then there's another one that loves that situation and comes right in. See, we always look at the human being medically in bits and pieces because we have heart specialists, lung specialists, bone specialists, nerve specialists, and so on. And they each see the human being from their point of view.
Right. It's from their point of view. There's not a holistic approach. We teach kids that the heart is a pump, when based on the laws of physics, our physiology, it's impossible for a muscle to push thick fluid through 60,000 miles of veins. So why are we teaching people that the body is like a machine? Well, if we have an external locus of control like doctors, how else are they supposed to perceive it and then have control over it? If it's not something they can fix, why are they even here? But if we all understand that we live in a holographic universe, that our souls communicate our emotions out through our hearts, which is a vortex, and then they project it out on the rim of the holographic field so we can see ourselves through energetic resonance, meaning a vibrational match. The universe is a mirror showing me myself in every moment as a constant feedback loop for self-improvement. So if I'm constantly seeing selfishness outside of myself, that is my soul showing me my own selfishness. But that kind of self-awareness isn't easy to control. So I'll use Britain as an example, America too. Did we colonize to help, or was the true intent to control? I know we taught people, oh, we're here to help, we're here to help, we're here to help. But is that really what the long-term effect was? Think about it.
few generalists, but they realize the human body is so complicated that no one mind can understand it. And furthermore, supposing we do succeed in healing all these people of their diseases, what do we then do about the population problem? I mean, we've stopped cholera, the black bubonic plague, we're getting the better of tuberculosis, we may fix cancer and heart disease. Then what will people die of? Well, they'll just go on living. There'll be enormous quantities of us. Then we have to fix this birth thing. Pills for everybody. Then we find, what are the effects, the side effects of those pills? What are the psychological effects upon men and women of not breeding children in the usual way? We don't know. And what seems a good thing today, or yesterday, like DDT, turns out tomorrow to have been a disaster. What seemed in the moral and spiritual sphere, too, like great virtues in times past, are easily seen today as hideous evils. Let's take, for example, the Inquisition. In its own day, among Catholics, the Holy Inquisition was regarded as we today regard the practice of psychiatry. You see, you feel that in curing a person of cancer, almost anything is justified. The most complex operations, the most weird surgery, people suspended for days and days on the end of tubes with X-ray penetration, burning, or people undergoing shock treatment, people locked in the colorless, monotonous corridors of mental institutions. In all good faith, they knew that witchcraft and heresy were terrible things, awful plagues, imperiling people's souls forever and ever. So any means were justified to cure people of heresy. We don't change. We're doing the same thing today, but under different names. We can look back at those people and see how evil that was, but we can't see it in ourselves.
You know, I'll give an example of this. It's 2026 right now, and last year, my older daughter was very triggered by all of the ICE operations, and she got really upset that children are being torn from their mothers. So I asked her, why do you resonate with that? Why are you attracted to that? Does that show you anything about yourself? You know, Carl Jung, projection work, right? Well, that gets back to when I almost died when she was 5 weeks old, and I was all of a sudden gone from her for 3 weeks. And as an infant, they internalized that as a primal wound. Mom is dead. So she has a wound inside of her soul that I died, but that's her subconscious lying to her. But that's how her subconscious is showing her herself through these challenging events. And until we all accept that we're souls having a human experience, that we live in a holographic universe, that the universe is a mirror showing us ourselves in every moment as a constant feedback loop for self-improvement, that's the wisdom. Knowledge says we attract what we are through energetic resonance, meaning a vibrational match. But when we have the biggest religion in the world teaching us an external locus of control, like fear God, and we just subservient to God, whatever he says we do, that's a very codependent, mentally ill mindset. And there's been a lot of research on that in psychology, that when you have an external locus of control and not an internal locus of control, there's the mental illness. Or early Christians, like the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, Gospel of Philip, Gospel of Thomas, this is what they were teaching, this inner authority. But with the rise of the nation states 2,000 years ago in Europe and the Middle East, they wanted to erase all the different pagan gods, establish one God that was mirrored in the king. And then the king was also the leader of the church in each of these nation states, hence the Spanish Inquisitions. Can't have women saying that they can connect to God through their intuition. Oh, got to burn them at the stake, because the cross is the only ladder to heaven. But in a holographic universe, where is heaven?
So therefore, beware of virtue. Lao Tzu, the Chinese philosopher, said, the highest virtue is not virtue, and therefore really is virtue. But inferior virtue cannot let go of being virtuous, and therefore is not virtue. Translated in more of a periphrastic way, the highest virtue is not conscious of itself as virtue, and therefore really is virtue. Lower virtue is so self-conscious that it's not virtue. In other words, when you breathe, you don't congratulate yourself on being virtuous.
Look how good I am. Are we having a challenge with that in today's culture with the rise of Instagram, Facebook, and everyone wanting to look virtuous online? How much virtue signaling do we see in the left wing? Oh, we're supporting free Palestine, free Iran, free everybody else, hate ourselves. They don't want to stand up in America, so much so that teachers take 5-year-olds to protest ICE. Is that self-hate or is that self-love? I'll let you answer that.
But breathing is a great virtue. It's living. When you come out with beautiful eyes, blue or brown or green as the case may be, you don't congratulate yourself for having grown one of the most fabulous jewels on earth. So it's just eyes, and you don't account it a virtue. To see, to entertain the miracles of color and form, you say, oh, that's just... But that's real virtue. Virtue in the sense, the old sense of the word, a strength, as when we talk about the healing virtue of a plant. That's real virtue. But the other virtues are stuck on. They're ersatz, they're imitation virtues. And they usually create
And
trouble.
there's the projection. I'm trying to do good, so just believe me and come with me because I know I'm doing good. That's a mental decision. That's not something organic coming out of our hearts. The common good before the individual good. Well, I would say that sets us up for mental illness. When I don't fill up my own cup of love and have an overflow to pour on other people, then I'm pouring from lack. If I have one pair of shoes and I see someone else without shoes and I give them my pair of shoes because the common good comes before the individual good, how am I still a healthy individual that can contribute to society? But I don't have shoes.
Because more diabolical things are done in the name of righteousness. And be assured that everybody of whatever nationality or political frame of mind or religion always goes to war with a sense of complete rightness. The other side is the devil. Our opponents, whether in China or Russia or Vietnam, have the same feeling of righteousness about what they're doing as we have on our side. And a plague on both houses. Because, as Confucius said, the goody-goodies are the thieves of virtue, which is the form of our own proverb. The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yes, I would say one of my teachings in my ebook below is changing the world as an inside job. Why? Because we live in a holographic universe. So let's get into that. Let's get into this Albert Einstein quote, "The field is the sole governing agency of the particle," and Dr. Joe Dispenza, because I think that's just, let's start there and work through everything and understand this wisdom that we live in a holographic universe. The universe is a mirror. And the field is the sole governing agency of the particle. The field meaning the energy field, the soul, the particle meaning the body. The body mirrors the soul. not the other way around. Not the soul mirrors the body. So let's hear from Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Einstein said the field, the wave, the energy is the sole governing agency of the particle. Energy controls matter. He didn't say particle controls the particle. He said the field controls the particle. If you change the information in the field, can you change the projection, the particle in three-dimensional reality? This is a holographic universe. So if the quantum field is an invisible field of energy that exists beyond our senses, beyond our body, our environment, and time, and the only way we are going to connect to it is take all of our attention off our body, all of our attention off the environment. What's the environment made of? People, objects, things, places, and take all of your attention off of linear time, the predictable future and the familiar past, and find the sweet spot, the generous present moment. That's the unknown. That's the door. That's the moment you become nobody, no one, no thing, nowhere, no time. That is the moment you are pure consciousness. And that is the moment you're walking through the door to the quantum field.
Right. So what Dr. Joe Dispenza is saying is that when we remove all of our projections, when we stop focusing outside of ourselves and bring it back to ourselves, that's when we can learn how to transform ourselves, transform our emotional wounds into personal wisdom. Like I had a wound, fear all men. And that was driving my anxiety in public until I was 51 years old. And the day after I found that, my oldest daughter, I would spend time with her at markets every weekend selling her jewelry that she made. So she knew exactly how anxious I was in public, and she noticed immediately. This is why changing the world is an inside job. Someone could be as virtuous and as good as possible to try to help me control my anxiety from the outside. But we live in a holographic universe. So my universe, in my heart, fear all men, and my subconscious was getting projected constantly, and I was taking that out on all the people around me. Now, how many women do you think have that wound today, fear all men? How many women do we see on YouTube saying they'd rather run into a bear in the woods than a man? I would say a lot of women have that same wound, but it's irrational. And what are we going to do when we do not have awareness of that wound? Oh, the Me Too movement. Oh, canceling men. Cancel culture. Women getting scared and thinking it's creepy that men are asking them out. Like, well, why did he approach me? And why is he around me? That's all the mental illness. So my intent for good deeds, let's go to a different country and bring Christianity and save them from being heretics. Is that really a good deed? Does Christianity really know how to teach love thy enemy? And why? Let's think about that. All right, let's get into a little deeper dive on how the universe is a mirror, how we live in a holographic universe. So let's start on the left that shows us the map of consciousness. And these are all of our emotions, including enlightenment, which is an emotion. I learned that 2 years ago, first time after I experienced enlightenment. And as you'll notice, fear, guilt, and shame are down here at the bottom at 100 hertz or below. Well, cancer, viruses, and bacteria all vibrate at 100 hertz or below. I haven't gotten sick in the past 6 years. Even through COVID, I went to hot yoga the whole time and I never got the shot, the vaccination, because I don't live in my fear, guilt, and shame. And all the cancer institutes in America have also done research on that. Who are the people that get cancer? They're the people who can't say no to others, who people please, who put other people before themselves, just like we saw a minute ago. The common good is more important than the individual good. That's how you control people. That's how you run people into the ground. That's emotional manipulation. But when people constantly have an overflowing cup of love in their hearts, then they're grounded, they're emotionally mature, and they act in emotionally mature ways in public, but they are not easily controlled. So when you learn to spend most of your time in love, peace, joy, and enlightenment between 500 and 1,000 hertz, you're not going to get sick, because you only get sick when you spend too much time in your fear, guilt, and shame. So How can we use the holographic universe, the universe is a mirror, to see ourselves? How does energetic resonance work? We attract what we are through energetic resonance, meaning a vibrational match. To quote Rumi, what you seek seeks you. So this two-prong experiment. First, we're going to see how when one prong is tuned to 512 hertz and one prong is tuned to 440 hertz, when the 512 moves, the 440 doesn't even notice. There's no resonance. There's no vibrational match. But when 440 and 440 are together, when the first 440 moves, that makes the other 440 move. So if I have, let's say, 40 hertz of selfishness inside my soul, when I move that 40 hertz, all the souls around me who are vibrational match, who resonate with that, will also move. And that's how I see myself. It doesn't make me right or wrong. It's just that's who I am. I mean, everyone used to believe that the earth was flat, but that wasn't true. Let's look at this experiment and see how this works. There's the movement when both of the tuning forks are tuned to the same frequency. Okay, let's keep going here. And we're going to get Dr. Andrew Huberman and a Carl Jung quote. Dr. Andrew Huberman talks about cancel culture and how we can regulate ourselves. So let's watch his clip, and then we'll talk about cancel culture a little bit more before we get into this Carl Jung quote.
What we need to do is start to figure out how we can, I think, especially for the next generation of kids, how to teach them to regulate their nervous system, adrenaline, as placing them in a compromised position. Like, we have to leverage the idea that being able to hear and listen hinges on the ability to be calm. So therefore, the ability to be calm is crucial to hearing and listening is crucial to our advancement as individuals and as groups. The problem is everyone's been trying to do this backwards. They've said we all have to get along. We have to cancel culture. We all have to, listen to one another. And I think, again, we have to start from the inside. We have to teach it physiologically. Now, I don't have a master plan on how to do that, but one of the reasons I'm here and one of the reasons I'm, teaching neuroscience on Instagram and not just in my laboratory is until we can learn to regulate the self, I don't think we're going to get where we want to go as a culture.
And I think he has a really good point. How can we learn how to regulate the self so we can engage in civil discourse and create heaven on earth together? We live in a holographic universe. So how can heaven be elsewhere? And has Christianity engaged in cancel culture? And let's look at early Christians and Carl Jung. So in the 4th century, the Council of Nicaea, they decided to use 4 of the 21 known Gospels at the time to create Christianity under a single God, under a nation state. Well, all those other, the Gospels that were not included were teaching this inner authority. How to expand your emotional range to include enlightenment. Not God gave us dominion over everyone else. But how do we individually become the best version of myself? And then I project that externally, all of that love, and then we co-create heaven on earth. And when I love myself and I spend time transforming my emotional wounds into personal wisdom, I'm not super reactive out in public. I'm not yelling and screaming in public like we see is so common today at all the protests. But let's learn about this Carl Jung quote. And Carl Jung, he was all about projection and inner authority, an internal locus of control, and not an external locus of control. Well, that aligned with the Nag Hammadi library found in 1945 in Egypt, which had a plethora of these early Gospels, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Philip, and they were all teaching inner authority. But those were the ones that were suppressed by the church. In the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, that they're dated as early as, I think, the 2nd century, they found a copy of that in 1896. It says that Jesus left his religion, his movement, to Mary Magdalene. Well, we all know the Christian church didn't have any female leadership. Women were silenced in the church. Women were burned at the stake for saying their intuition connected them from God. Some things to think about. So Carl Jung said, oh yeah, and the first codex from that find was named the Jung Codex because people noticed that the teachings from early Christianity that were suppressed by the Council of Nicaea in the fourth century, the Roman Church, were completely in alignment with Carl Jung's teachings. There is no light without shadow, and no psychic wholeness without imperfection. To round itself out, life calls not for perfection, but for completeness. For this, the thorn in the flesh is needed, the suffering of defects without which there is no progress and no ascent. So I see perfection as an overactive mind and an underactive soul. When we shut down the heart and we overactivate the brain, there's the projection. There's the desire for perfection. There's a desire for control. There's the desire to be virtuous. There's all these desires come out of us. We project them onto other people and go, oh, look how great I am. But that's all external validation. Why do I need external validation if I know how to validate myself internally? That's an emotionally mature, individuated human being. But when I'm constantly looking for external validation, like so many addicts do, sex addicts, drug addicts, shopaholics, eating, all of this external validation, I'm not a healthy, mature adult. Okay. Bruce Lipton, epigenetics. Let's learn about epigenetics. Epi means before, signifying what happens before our genetics are triggered. And it teaches us that less than 1% of our mental and physical diseases come from our genetics. So we saw earlier, someone gets chicken pox. Well, how do we get rid of the bumps? Well, if less than 1% of our diseases come from our genetics, why are we focusing on the body? Why aren't we focusing on the field, the energy body, the soul? He's got a great example about why we should focus on the energy body, the soul, the consciousness.
Whatever picture you hold in your mind, the brain releases complementary chemistry that matches that picture, and it releases it into the body, and the chemistry of the blood is what controls the genes and the behavior. Children, when adopted into a family where there's cancer running in that family, the adopted child will get the same family cancer. But the point, the adopted child has totally different genetics. What was the point? It was being adopted into a family where the programming of that child is what caused the cancer. It's consciousness who releases the chemistry to the environment that controls the genes. And you can change your consciousness, and you can change your environment. And all of a sudden I said, oh my God, we were programmed to be victims. It turns out we are masters of our genetic activity. And this is the new science called epigenetics.
Right. So if kids are adopted into a family and they get the cancer from the family they were adopted into and not the one based on their genetics, why are women cutting off their breasts, removing their ovaries, their womb? That's fear-based medicine, not based on how things will really occur, not based on reality. So I'm just showing there's a lot of challenges and a lot of things to come out of to solve this problem, that teaching people that we live in a holographic universe, that the universe is a mirror showing us ourselves in every moment as a constant feedback loop for self-improvement, that changing the world is an inside job. So let's learn how the heart is a vortex. And then we're going to learn how blood flows in an embryo before the heart even forms. So how can the heart be responsible for pumping blood when blood is flowing in the embryo without a formed heart? Do you see the challenge there? Okay, let me pull up this video.
Let me just read this because I think it's actually probably one of the best descriptions of the heart that I've ever run across. They taught you the heart was just a glorified meat pump, that it squeezes and pushes blood like some crude mechanical device, a hydraulic engine made of flesh. That is what they want you to believe, because if you buy into that primitive lie, you never ask deeper questions. But it is false. It has always been false. And the real science proves it. Dr. Francesco Torrenguas, a Spanish cardiac researcher, discovered what the textbooks refused to acknowledge, that the heart is not a pump. He dissected thousands of hearts and found that the heart is a single continuous muscle band folded into a spiral. He proved that the heart works like a vortex generator, creating suction and torque, not pressure. He called it the helical ventricular myocardial band, and it changes everything. The real movement of the blood comes from pressure differentials, electromagnetic flow, and coherent resonance. The blood spirals naturally. It need not be forced through miles of arteries and capillaries. The so-called pump is not strong enough to push thick fluid through 60,000 miles of tubing. That is basic physics. That lie was dead on arrival. Here is the truth. Blood moves before the heart forms in the embryo. That is, by the way, a documented fact. It flows via frequency, resonance, and electric charge. The body is a field, not a factory. Your heart creates a toroidal electromagnetic field that radiates 6 meters from the body. This field syncs with the earth, the sun, and every living being around you. It is a resonator, a tuner, a conductor. It aligns the rhythm of your cells. It feels, it remembers, it emits, and it responds to emotion, thought, light, sound, and breath. When you feel love, grief, fear, or peace, your heart transmits it. It is the central frequency modulator of your biology, not a pump. And the institutions know this. The Heart Math Institute has measured these fields for decades. They know the heart has more neuronal cells than parts of the brain. They know it is a second brain. They know coherence in the heart transforms the entire nervous system. So why are they still teaching children a 400-year-old guess from William Harvey that has never been updated?
That is an excellent question. And let's get into that for a second. So that's Dr. Tom Cohen. And 400 years ago, Leonardo da Vinci was doing research that the heart is a vortex. But that's an internal locus of control. And that was in direct conflict with Christianity, an external locus of control. Christianity was teaching that the cross is the only ladder to heaven. But if each human's heart is a vortex, as powerful as a black hole, as when you can't command a vortex, you can't tell a black hole what to do. So teaching people that, would that have supported nation states? Would that have supported people being loyal to the kingdom that they were in? Being loyal to the church that was granting them access to heaven? And if we teach people that the heart's a vortex, we live in a holographic universe, why go to church? Do you see the conundrum that what we're having here? Is that when the overarching worldview, which is attached to the ruling class, we can't change that. So, okay, yeah, it's an external locus of control. The heart's a pump, the body is a machine, and that's what we taught people, and that's how we control people. But now's the time for a new day. And I'll quote Tesla. If you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And that leads us into how the heart is formed in an embryo. Before the heart beats for the first time, something far greater begins to move. Long before your heart ever beat, thousands of cardiac cells made a silent decision. There was no pulse, no rhythm, no sound. In the earliest stages of development, individual heart cells began firing electrical signals on their own. Then something remarkable happens. They synchronize. Separate impulses align into one coordinated electrical wave. That wave triggers the first contraction, the first heartbeat, the beginning of a rhythm that can last a lifetime. So starting with something so amazing and healthy, how did we get to having cancer and viruses and bacteria? Let's get back to Dr. Gabor Mate, who can really teach us about how all of this works. Okay, let's start with his quote on the left, and then we'll get into one of my teachings. When people do not know how to say no to others in order to prioritize their own physiological needs, the body will say no for them in the form of cancer, such as disease. And we saw that. How many countries and religions teach that the common good is more important than the individual good? If the common good is more important than the individual, why should someone individuate, which is Carl Jung, and become a healthy, independent person when the common good is more important than them? So, and this is where I realized what I was doing. I was always putting community before myself. And that's when I was mentally ill. That's when I was super codependent. That's when I had tons of failed relationships. That's when I believed things like fear all men instead of men protect me. That's when I had a subconscious lie that if I apologize, my loved ones will leave me. Oh, when I trusted myself, loved myself, believed myself, oh, when I apologize, my loved ones will want to stay. But why would I believe in myself over community when I have my religion teaching me, the culture teaching me, history teaching me? And is that worldview to control people, or does it create healthy people? Because I'd argue it's for control and not health. When I have my own cup of love and it has overflow, then I can pour out from that overflow onto my partner, onto my children, onto my family, and lastly, the community. But what do we see happening now? We have 18, 19, 20-year-olds protesting against ICE, the Palestinian, the Israeli government. How at 18 years old do they even know the intricacies of something so challenging as the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? Do they even know how to love themselves? But this again is an example of us putting community before self. And I don't mean selfish. By self-love, healthy diet, healthy sleep, healthy exercise. Engage in work that's meaningful for you, not because of somebody else. Don't become a doctor because your dad never could. Become a doctor because it came out of your heart. That's a mental decision when your heart is closed. When your heart's open, the doctor naturally comes out. Okay, great. Like when I opened my heart and healed from my childhood trauma, I'm a shaman and that naturally came out of me. But that wasn't until I was 45. That started the past 10 years. But let's get to Dr. Gabor Mate and then another Carl Jung quote. Let's hear from him.
What happens to a child where the attachment need is not compatible with the need for authenticity? In other words, if I'm authentic, my parents will reject me. If I feel what I feel and express what I feel and insist on my own truth, my parents can't handle it. And parents convey those messages unconsciously all the time. Not because they mean to, not because they don't love the child, not because they're not trying to do their best, but because they themselves are suppressed or traumatized or hurt or stressed. And what does the child do with that? Well, if I give up my attachment for the sake of authenticity, I lose my relationships on which my life depends. Therefore, there's no question. What becomes suppressed is our authenticity, our emotions. And then we become 25 and 30 or 35, 40, and we don't know who we are.
Right. And when we teach people the common good, like the family good, is more important than the individual good, authenticity is repressed. The individuation process is repressed, and we get emotionally immature adults who want to stop things outside of themselves to make themselves feel more comfortable, as opposed to changing themselves and realizing that the only reason they're getting triggered by these things outside of themselves is because they don't know how to process their own emotions. They don't know how to surf the waves of life, another teaching in my book. And this is creating the loneliness epidemic. Carl Jung can help us. Loneliness does not come from having no people about one, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself, or from holding views that others find inadmissible. And we have a loneliness epidemic. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. If you resonated, please like and subscribe so you can be up to date in the latest and greatest. I just starting every Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific, a live webinar where I'll be going over my healing strategies and be taking individual questions. Please join me for that. All right, take care. Bye.